Hi, you're listening to It Happened to Me, a rare disease and medical challenges podcast. The mission of our podcast is to support you, our listeners, and to create community as you confront the toughest challenges in life. All of us will experience health hardships. The real question is how we adapt. That's the focus of It Happened to Me, which wants to help you overcome limitations and live a full and satisfying life. Drawing on their own health challenges, co-hosts Cathy Gildenhorn and Beth Glassman interview guests who share stories and research to help you succeed in the face of difficult health obstacles. It happened to me. I'm not alone, and neither are you.
What began as one handmade bed in a garage grew into a global movement that has changed the lives of hundreds and thousands of children. In this episode, we will speak with Luke Mickelson, founder of Sleep in Heavenly Peace, a nonprofit built around the mission that no child sleeps on a floor in our town.
Luke is joining us to share his personal journey behind the organization, from his roots in small town Idaho to building what has become the largest bed building charity in the world. We talk about the moments that shaped his purpose, what he has learned through service, and how something as simple as a bed can affect dignity, stability, and a child's everyday life. Welcome to It Happened to Me today, Luke. We're thrilled to have you here.
It's an honor. Thank you so much.
Luke, well, let's start at the beginning.
Mhm.
Tell me what was going through your head when you made that first bed.
You know, it's funny. I don't know how other charities start, or at least,
Right.
most charities, but mine did not start with, oh, there's a bed building problem in our country and I'm going to solve it. Really, it started because there was a dad that wanted to teach his kids the value of service and giving back. That's really how this all started. I
Oh.
grew up in a small town, and some of the benefits of growing in a small town is you get to know everybody.
Yes.
Right.
And it's the same benefits, the same problem. They know you just as well, So,
Yeah.
but what that brings to you is a level of support and community involvement and whatnot that you would otherwise maybe not have in a larger town. And that's what I took away from that. We just learned to lean on each other and help each other out. When you're a farmer and you're out in the field and something goes wrong, you got to figure it out yourself or you got to call a buddy, and so
Mhm.
that's just what that community brought. And so when I wanted to raise my kids in that environment, and we did. I had 3 kids at the time this all started. I was coaching football. I had my career set before me. I was serving in my church. And, did I know child bedlessness was a thing? No, I mean, it's not even a real word. And I didn't know, and no one knew that this was happening even in my small 4,000 populated town. But when you discover it, and when I discovered it, you can't help but want to do something. It just hit me so hard. I couldn't sit by and not do anything about it.
Luke, I have to say, I truly applaud these efforts. I'm old enough to say there was a time when service was very important. And we
Mm.
heard about it, we talked about it, we engaged in it. And I'm thinking about the Shrivers, Eunice and Sarge Shriver, and thinking about the Kennedy era. And
Mm.
service was part of our vocabulary. And
Yeah.
sadly, I think it has gone away. And so I am so grateful that people like you, are bringing it back because it is important. It is important for the soul and it is an important thing to teach. So your children certainly are benefiting, as is your town and now the world through your
Well,
effort.
I couldn't agree more, Beth. What I've learned growing up, and it's just confirmed every time I build a bed, is, if you want true joy in life, you got to stop looking at yourself. And
Mm.
and if you look and see how you can help someone else out, when you put yourself in that service mind, problems, they don't go away. Of course not. They're still going to
Mhm.
be there.
Right.
But when you serve people, when you have that on your mind and you get those fulfilling feelings that come from serving other people and thinking about helping and whatnot, your problems, you can now look at them and it puts you in a perspective that you might be able to see them in a completely different light. It's like we as humans, when we got a problem, it's like a monster in the closet, right? Until we
Mhm.
Right.
face it, until we open the door, that monster's big and as ugly as we can create it. It's just this huge thing. But if you can open the door and look at it, most times, oftentimes, it's not near as big or as bad as it seems. And I think service puts us in that perspective, or at least in a place to look at it in a different perspective, and we can handle things better. And you're right, Bev. I 100% agree. Service, and the thought of others and helping others, right, is going away. I'd like to think it's starting to come back. Maybe that's just
I
because
hope
I'm just
so.
in this
Yeah.
I
world.
do.
But if
Yes.
people would stop thinking about their own stinking problems all the
Right.
time and just see how they can help someone else out. My oldest, Riley's 23. My daughter's 20, about to turn 21, and my
Oh,
little man
wow.
just turned, well, I shouldn't say just. He's just about to turn 15. My gosh, I'm old, guys.
Your wonderful role modeling
Uh,
with service, has it affected their giving back?
Oh, I think so. My son was the oldest at the time, and it was just a few years after when this all happened, he was about 10. And I remember he just entered high school. So he's what, 13, 14, something like that. And walking home, and he saw a little old lady whose lawn was just atrocious, right? He started mowing her lawn every week, one day a
Oh,
week, and it's like,
wow.
and he was proud to tell me that, and oh, I tell you what, dad win right there. It was a dad moment,
Yes.
That is a dad moment.
I wonder if our listeners, and I can speak for myself, I am not aware of children who don't have beds. This is a part of society that I don't really come in contact with. And so I wondered if you could tell us what you saw and expand my world and expand our listeners' world to understand what is actually going on out there. This is something that's so unspeakable. In the greatest country on the planet that we can have something so unjust as children not even having a place to sleep.
Well, thank you for the question. Yeah, I was like everybody, probably like most of your listeners when I come on these podcasts, no one knows, and it's not an uncommon thing. When I was about 35 years old, this is 2012, so what, 14 years ago. I served in my church in a position called a young men's president, kind of like a youth pastor, if you
Mm,
will.
Uh-huh.
Although, I'm not a youth pastor.
mm,
But anyway, I love the kids, and I was a coach, of course, so they put me in working with the boys ages 12 to 17 or so. And the funny thing, and all youth leaders probably have the same problem I did when I was, 14 years ago, trying to find an activity that's fun and exciting that
mm.
doesn't involve a screen or a computer or some sort
Yep.
of game,
Yep.
right? That's not easy things to do nowadays. And
Yes.
and back then it was the same. Well, as part of this position, I'd go to these meetings that the other church leaders and auxiliary leaders had, and we would talk about the things that are happening in the community and the things that our individual, assignments we were doing, things of that nature, and people we were helping. Well, being from a small town,
Yeah.
one leader got up and started talking about a family that really caught my ear because they lived in a part of the town that I didn't even know existed. I mean, we're
Oh.
talking,
Mm.
I've been riding my bike around this town since I'm 5.
Oh.
And so I'm like, "Wait, where's this place?" And then she started talking about the things she had paid a visit to them. The things that the family needed. They needed food and some clothes, and the kids didn't have any beds, and they needed rides to work. And I said, "Whoa, wait a minute. Did you just say the kids don't have any beds?" And she said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, yeah, certainly they like got mattresses, right?" And she says, "No, they're just sleeping on the floor with pillows and a blanket." And I don't
Oh,
know, ladies, it just hit me. I mean, I thought of my own kids, what would that be like, is sleeping on the floor? I thought, how uncomfortable, how hard it would be to wake up and go to school,
Yep.
and then I thought about the Boy Scouts, because the activities that we would
yeah.
do for the Young
Mm.
Men's program was Boy Scouts, right? So
Yep.
I thought, here's a great opportunity that I could teach these boys how to build something, get an Xbox controller out of their hands and put a drill in it, and let's teach them something, right? And I also wanted them to learn the joys of service and giving back. And
Yes.
so now I had never built furniture before in my life, but
Mm.
wasn't a stranger to tools. I could figure things out. And so went home, and my daughter had a bunk bed, so I kind of, measured it and got an idea what I wanted to do. And then the boys came over that week, And it took a couple of 3 nights to finish this bunk bed. But I tell you what, it was such a win because all the
Oh,
boys loved it. Really, they were only supposed to be with us one night, but they all came back every night to build this bed for this family that had kids sleeping on the floor, and to see the joy in their life, or their eyes rather, as they built these beds, and to talk about, hey, what would it be like to sleep on the floor? What would it be like if you
mm,
had a friend that was sleeping on the floor? It opened up a lot of dialogue that was
mm.
just so meaningful. Well, the funny thing is the word kind of got out in the community, in the church, what we were doing. And, Saturday came around, Saturday night, to deliver this bed. Man, like 50 people, well, it wasn't that much, about
Oh,
30 people showed up at my house, and I was like, "What's going on? We can't send, an army over to this two-bedroom
right.
apartment." And so I had to stay back, with a couple leaders, and, of course, I cleaned my garage. The next day at church, they just told me how amazing it was. The kids were so grateful and
Oh,
happy, and the parents were grateful, and I was
wow.
excited. The Boy Scouts shared their thoughts about, what they saw and what they felt, and, it was so awesome all the way around. Now, I was a little jealous because I did on the delivery, but you know what? Hey, as leaders, that's what we do, right?
Right.
Mission accomplished. And but the kind of the rest of the story is, at the time this was all going on, for several years, I personally was going through a little bit of a identity crisis, certainly a faith crisis, and I think people go through this. Everybody goes through this when you get a little older in your age, and you kind of look back and you think, what was important to me back then is not important to me now. What does that mean for me now? I'm a
Hmm.
dad. I've got kids. I used to value the success and base my success off the number of zeros behind my paycheck. I
Right.
didn't care much about that anymore. So I was really in this dense fog of, what am I supposed to do? What is the best thing, the right thing for me? How do I make an imprint on this planet, while I'm living here?
Mm,
Well, it was in this turmoil, and I'd been going through it for a couple years, that
wow.
this thing kinda landed in my lap, and it really sparked something in my heart, right? The just
Mm,
the
Yeah.
thought of helping children, and I was really excited, and it was awesome. But the next week came around, and it's funny how life just creeps itself back in, and you just fall back into the same rut. It was now almost worse because here I just did this amazing project, filled my heart so full, right? And it was just awesome. And boom, we were done. We solved child bedlessness. No more,
mhm.
And so it was sitting on the couch trying to fight these depressing feelings, this trying to work this out in my head. No one knew it. It was just me, trying to be tough going through this. Well, I was watching Big Bang Theory with my kids on the couch. I love
Yeah.
that program, and we watch it all the time. Well, a commercial come on, and it was some sort of Xbox something or other. I don't even remember, but I remember my kids, and, every parent knows the beginning of December, and you see commercials, and they see what's coming next,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
We all do. And sure enough, they didn't disappoint. "Hey, Dad, can we have another Xbox?" Well, here I am sitting on the couch going through this turmoil in my head. What am I supposed to do? Who am I? What do I believe? I just built a bed for these kids that don't have beds. This was awesome. Now it's over. Now my kids want an Xbox. They don't need another Xbox. They need a bed. All these things, just this noise in my
Hmm.
head. And then all of a sudden I got this thought. You're missing an opportunity to teach your kids something.
Yeah.
And so I stood up. I didn't say anything to him. I just stood up and went to the garage. And my kids are like, "Dad, where are you going? Big Bing's on." And I said, "I got some leftover wood. I'm gonna build another bunk bed, and you're gonna come and help me." And we had such a great time. I mean, I've got a pictures of
Oh.
my daughter in her pink tutu drilling screws in wood, my son, his Boise State jersey, pounding away. We had a great time. It was awesome, and I wanted them to learn the joy of
Yes.
service, what they get
Yes.
out of it, not just
Yeah.
what they help, but as well as to appreciate the things they had. You didn't need another Xbox. You got a
Right.
bed. There's kids out there that didn't have beds. Well, the ironic thing was, what do you do with it? We built this bed. I had no idea what to do with this thing, right? Well, my wife says, "Well, why don't you put it on Facebook, buy, sell, trade?" Now, that seems common nowadays. 14 years ago, it wasn't as common to me as it is now. I said, "You want me to put a free bed where?"
Mm,
But when I did, a couple of things happened. And all I said was, "Hey, this is a family Christmas project. We built this bed for any child that doesn't have a bed. I can think of Christmas going by with someone sleeping on the floor. I'm not the greatest woodwork guy in the world, but, hey, here you go, right? Well, 2 things happened. The first thing was I had so many people comment on this post I did,
Oh,
Wow.
and people I didn't even know. I mean, total strangers. And some friends I hadn't talked to in 20 years.
yeah.
Then the second thing that was surprising is they all knew kids that were sleeping on the
No.
Wow.
not just and
Oh,
they shared what the tough part was they shared what they were sleeping on, not just concrete, but pallets and couch cushions.
oh,
Was a family of 8 that were sleeping in an 8-passenger van. I mean, you understand, like, I've heard and seen poverty before, but when it's in your
right,
own hometown and it's kids
right,
without beds, it just didn't dawn on me that this was an
right,
issue.
Right.
right.
And then I got a phone call from a friend of mine, and she called me up. She says, "Luke, hey, have you delivered that bed yet?" I said, "No, I haven't." She worked in the social services sector, so she dealt
Ah,
with a lot of these, transitioning homelessness and
yeah.
Yeah.
she says, "Let me tell you about Haley.
Oh,
Haley's a 6-year-old girl that has never slept on a bed. Only
Oh,
slept only slept in the backseat of her mom's car. They were homeless.
oh,
And she and some friends helped them get a house, and I said, "Perfect. This is exactly what
mm,
I wanted me and my kids' bed to go to," right? So
right.
we loaded this bed up and took it out to Haley's house. Now, again, I'd seen homelessness and transitioning homelessness and foster care and, really
Right.
poverty type situations before. But I'd never walked into them looking at it through the eyes of a 6-year-old.
mm,
What
Mm.
would that be like? And when you walk into a house that has nothing in it, there's no
mm,
couch or
mm,
TV to watch Saturday morning cartoons on like I did. There's
mm,
no kitchen table and chair to eat cereal in the morning before school like I did. The only thing in the house was a hot plate that had a can of soup on it. That was it.
mm,
You know, and
Wow.
and but this little girl was so happy. She had a house, right? And she
Right.
didn't know why we were there. I just leaned down and said, "Haley, why don't you show me where you sleep?" So excited, ran us back to her bedroom, and you can imagine what this looked like, right? There was holes in the carpet and tears in the wallpaper, and the closet door was missing, the room was dimly lit, used toys everywhere. But the most shocking thing, and what got me the most, is when I looked in the corner of the room and there was a pile of clothes, and that's where Haley
mm,
slept. She slept on her school clothes. She'd come home from school,
mm,
put her PJs on, sleep on her school clothes, shirt for pillow, pants for a blanket, and then put those same shirt and pants on, go to school the next day. I just I about lost it. And ladies, I'd like to think
yeah,
I'm a tough farm kid from Idaho.
yeah,
No, I just about lost. And if that wasn't enough just to tear your heart out, then I look up at mom. Here's a single mom. And I was raised by a single mom too. 6 years of tears just pouring down this poor lady's face.
oh,
And I knew what every single one of those tears meant. I'd seen them
yeah,
before, the pain and frustration and guilt and worry, all this just because she couldn't provide a bed for her child. It was too much of a luxury in her stage of life, which is a terrible thought. And
yes,
and right then I knew, okay, this is way more than just a bed. This is way
yes,
more than just a good night's sleep. And so we
it's
started building as many
absolutely.
beds as we could.
Luke, have you heard the book Make Your Bed? It was Admiral McCaven,
I've
and
I've listened to his speech. His
his
book.
speech is and I've listened to his speech, and when I was preparing for today, I started thinking about his speech and talking about how do you start your day? And he talks about making your bed, that you create order and you create discipline and you have purpose. And imagine you're not even at step 1.
Right.
You're already at a deficit. So what Admiral McCraven was talking about that it's and for our listeners, if you haven't heard this speech, I would
Oh,
just highly recommend it. It is so powerful. But what you have done is taken us to the pre-step to get
mm.
to the bed. You
Yes.
know, that you can't how can you have success if you don't have a bed? This is so crucial. And what you stumbled onto, I just think it's magical what you did.
Absolutely.
Really so crucially important that that bed symbolizes so much for a
Well, thank you
child.
for saying that because I tell people, listen, just give me 60 seconds. Just for a second, think about this.
Yeah.
You're 6 years old. You don't have a bed. You're sleeping on your clothes like Haley, right?
Yeah.
So when you wake up in the morning, right? You're right. There's no bed to make. And I thought about his speech many, many times through the years,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
You wake up, you're not ready for school. You're stiff, you're
No.
sore, you didn't sleep well, all these other kids are ready. You're supposed to go and learn, these kids struggle in school, they struggle with grades, they struggle making friends. They they can't come home and have sleepovers like normal kids because they don't have
Right.
beds, right? They don't want
They don't
kids to
have
come over, so they go to
see
their
their
friend's
home.
house, right?
Yeah.
And not only does little Johnny, their friend, have a bed, he's got throw pillows for crying out loud. I mean,
Mm.
what kind of message do these kids, internally pick up from? And worse yet, Beth, Cathy, when you and I have a bad day, when life's rough or the boss was hard or I lost a client or friends are mad at us or worse yet, we have the flu. I mean,
Hmm.
tell me, what is the one place in the entire planet that all of us just can't wait to crawl into and just
Yeah.
Right.
forget the world, right? These
It's
kids don't
exactly
have
right.
that.
They
They
don't
don't
have
have a bed to do that with,
yeah.
and
Oh,
and when you start and think about that, and kind of to your comments, Beth, when we deliver a bed to a child, there's two things I always say to him. I said, "Listen, I want you to know, little Johnny, this is your bed. It's nobody else's. It's not your parents. It's not your brothers and sisters. It's your bed." These kids don't have a lot of possessions, right? They
Right.
don't have a lot of ownership, if you will, which can bring a sense of good pride and ownership. And then I say, and these people in this room that delivered this bed to you, that you don't know who they are. Listen, they love you. They love you so much they built
Oh,
and delivered this bed to you because I think it's important. These kids, we don't know what goes on in their head. They look at their friends and all the things that their friends have, and something is so mundane and common as a bed, and they don't even have that. That's got to be hard on them. And
yes.
the lack of maybe love they maybe feel from other people, and we just want these kids again to have more than just a heavenly night's sleep. It's more than that. It's bringing dignity. It's bringing confidence and we have post studies of kids that now have beds 30, 60, 90 days later their moods improve dramatically.
I'm not
Absolutely, their grade,
surprised.
every single one of them, their grades go up. I mean, just think about that. This will blow your mind. I had a chapter president who started, he was a juvenile detention officer, and
Mm.
so
Huh.
in the juvenile detention center, and I mean, I assume they get in like these groups and they have like little group discussions with 10 or 15 or 20 of these kids. Well, he was in one of these sessions and he told me, he says, "Luke, I just thought I'm going to ask this question." He said, he asked all the kids there, "Tell me, how many of you grew up without a bed?" It was 85. That tell you a story. Now, it's not just because of a bed, of course not, but it's these little incremental things in these kids' lives that
Mhm.
they
That
don't have that other people do that I mean, when you really stop and think about what a bed provides, it is a lot more than just a good night's sleep, right? And a good
Mhm.
night's sleep is huge. We all know that. And that's why, when I left little Haley's room, especially when I saw her mom crying. Listen, I'm a farm kid from Idaho. I love hunting. I love fishing. I love outdoor stuff. I love college football on Saturday. I loved all that stuff. I loved it for 35 years. Ladies, I cannot stress this enough. In literally that quick, a snap of a finger, none of them mattered anymore. And I looked at that and I thought, me and my kids took a couple of nights, sure, to build that bed, but to solve that problem, oh
was
yeah,
huge.
that's
Yeah.
well worth my time. You know,
Absolutely. Well,
my friend.
Luke, I want to step back a little because your nonprofit, Sleep in Heavenly Peace, seems to have become quite a journey for you and for everyone around you. But many people gauge or see a nonprofit success according to the numbers.
Sure.
Well, Sleep in Heavenly Peace is building over 350,000 beds. That's an incredible accomplishment. But behind every number is a story and what families have shared with you and about how receiving a bed changes day to day life for their children. And this piggybacks right onto what you were saying about when you delivered that bunk bed to the 6-year-old who had never had a bed before and her mother crying. And I just want to know if there's other stories that have stuck with you or if there are other metrics or measures that you've put in place that really help see how it changes behavior, especially after your story about the juvenile detention home and the 85%.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's stories all over the place. I'm gonna be publishing a book here in the next couple of years with all these great stories from all of our
Oh, great.
friends. And
Good.
I'll give you one example. This is one of my favorites
Yes.
because it happened to me personally. You know, when you start out in our little small town, you know, we started building beds, right? The first year we built 21 beds, delivered them all before Santa showed up. It was awesome. So
Oh,
the next year came around and we wanted to do more. You know, my buddy from Boise came down and we were gonna so we built beds in Twin Falls, Idaho, and then we went up and built beds the next weekend in Boise and delivered them all. Well, I got a call from the paper and they wanted to do a story on us, which, you know, it's cool, right? You know, your first time
sure.
reading the paper, right? Why not? Well, the sad story was there was a family and Twin Falls is, you know, there's a town next to mine, which is about 40,000 people, not a huge town. But there was a tragedy that happened where a boyfriend was with the mom and her kids, and he shot her and
Oh, God.
killed himself. And I mean, it's
Oh,
just a
no.
really bad situation
Terrible. Yeah.
right in front of the kids.
Oh, oh.
Well, there was I'm trying to remember, there's like 4 or 5 kids that were involved. Well, they didn't have a place to go, so they're and we see this a lot, their grandparents took them in. Well, grandparents, I'll tell you right now, they did not have room, space, or time, right, for, you know, teenage and younger kids to come live with them, let alone beds or the finances to do that. So we were asked and, you know, honored to be able to deliver beds to this family in need, you know, and
Wow.
that's a very common story of kids that and grandparents that have supposed to be enjoying their golden years, but no, they're jumping in to help their family out. And there's a lot of stories. There's stories we always tell chapter presidents, look, hold on to about 5% of your beds in inventory because, you know, for example, again, this happened to me. I had a call from a judge that said, listen, we have two a sibling, a brother and sister, you know, 6, 8, something like that. Parents are out of the picture. Grandparents live across the country. They can't take them, so they went into the foster care system, and they
Oh,
had a great family that to go to, but the family only had one bed, and they couldn't afford
mm.
another. Well, the judge gave him 24 hours to find a bed, or one of them was gonna have to go back into foster care. I mean, can you imagine
Oh, no.
the only
Oh,
people they know is each other, and they're about to get split up because of a bed? Come on, you know?
Yeah.
We had a bed in the house 12 hours later, you know? So,
oh,
there's
Oh,
all these little
that's
things.
wonderful.
Oh, there's all these little things. I have this if I can share one more story.
yes.
Yes, please.
And this is actually on the other side of the coin. This is a volunteer. This and we value, I can't tell you how much, and all you nonprofit listeners out there, leaders out there, I'm gonna drop a gold nugget here at you. Volunteer experience. The volunteer experience is just as important as the mission that you serve because that's who
Mm,
helps you
Yeah.
solve these problems, right? Is your volunteers.
uh-huh.
We did a build and I haven't really explained. We build beds by bringing raw lumber mobily out in the middle of a parking lot. We bring all the tools and we have kind of an assembly line that we build these beds in. And the volunteers,
Mm.
local communities, I mean, people that they have never touched a drill in their life, they're the ones building the beds. It's super fun. Yeah, it's super fun. Well, we were doing this public build in a local town at a hospital, and you know, I was out running around, you know, helping people, teaching them how to do this, that, and the other. And I had a lady come tap on my shoulder, and she says, "Hey, Luke, can I have you come meet my mom?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, of course." And so she walked me over this little old lady. She's in a wheelchair, and she, you know, hair's all done up. She wasn't
Yeah.
doing anything, just watching, and she leaned down and she had a little envelope and she says, Would you please use this to help more kids out?" You know, and it was a little, I don't remember how much it was, but there was a little money in there. And it was really,
Oh, that's such a wonderful story.
oh,
But it
just
made me think there's been something on my mind, and I'm wondering, it's off on a side, but has a bed building company or a camp bed company ever heard about Sleep in Heavenly Peace and wanted to fund some beds or buy materials so you could build more or donate beds and then have the newspaper or whoever you know, do a story thanking them.
absolutely, you know, we're our largest sponsors, Lowe's. Lowe's
We
Home.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
yeah, they give us millions and millions of dollars a year. They've built just them alone, they build about I mean, it's hard to say because a lot of their stores they're an amazing company. There are a lot of their stores will sponsor a build day, you know, and for $250 a bed,
Oh,
and you build, you know,
Oh,
20 to 40 beds, you know, that's
that's
tens of thousands of
incredible.
dollars, you know, it's not cheap.
oh.
and these guys help up. I mean, we have built, and I'll update your numbers a little bit, Kathy.
Okay.
This summer, well, towards the end of the summer, we will have built our 500,000th bed.
You're
Oh,
kidding.
Oh.
congrats.
That's fantastic.
We're building about 100,000 beds a year, and the reason why is because we put on new chapters, and chapters are people like yourselves that want to help. They just don't know how. They find that there's not a chapter of SHP in their area, so they start a chapter. It's amazing.
How many chapters do you have?
We've trained over 470 now.
Wow.
And that's why we can build 100,000 beds a year. And that's just how big the need is. Actually, child bedlessness. Here's some statistics for you.
Okay.
Child bedlessness represents greater than 3% of the total population. So if you're in a town of 100,000 people, there are literally 3,000 kids that don't have beds that are sleeping on the floor. Now, as you and I speak right now, nationwide, there on average is 150,000 kids on our waiting list, just waiting for beds.
Oh.
And the sad reality of that is we only cover about 30. So it doesn't take rocket science to realize 30%, 150,000, what would it be at 100%?
Yeah.
There are millions and millions of kids that we can guesstimate about, right? Not even actual that we know, but we know that there are over 10 to 12 million kids in the United States that don't have a bed. I mean, the United
Wow.
States.
And this isn't even globally. This is just nationally.
Yeah, this is just national. This funny. Well, I shouldn't say it's funny. It caught me real off guard, I guess, about 2 years into this. So what about 2014 when we actually became a nonprofit? I started getting calls from CASA, Child Protective Services, foster care, these agents
Right.
helping these families. I was like their favorite guy. I mean, they
Yes.
called me and I had no idea why. I mean, until one of them said, "Luke, you don't understand. Providing a bed for a child, just a child, in these like transitioning situations is oftentimes the single hardest thing for them to get." It just blew me away. I'm like, why? Well, I
What?
know
Yeah.
why now is because when I decided to be a nonprofit, I did what I think everybody else would do. Let's go find another nonprofit that's providing beds for kids, see what they do, and kind of go from there. I found one in the entire United States.
Really?
One. Do you believe that? I mean, think how many
Really?
soup kitchens you know? Thousands
Yes.
of them, right? On one. And that's why they told me that there's no other agencies that are doing this because no one knows about child bedlessness. No one knows. Everybody thinks a child has a bed, and
Right.
it's just simply not the truth.
Wow. So I've got to ask you, what have all these personal experiences, interactions, and stories taught you about need, about pride that comes with the bed, about resilience, about the quiet struggles families may be carrying on their own shoulders?
I'll give you a great example. I had a guy come up to me. I mean, don't know him from Adam, right? Just this guy in one of our builds come up and almost tears in his eyes. I mean, he was choking up a little bit. He says, "Luke," he says, and he was there helping build beds with us. And he says, "Luke," he says, "I have to apologize to you." And I'm like, "For what, buddy? I don't know who you are." He says, "I've been watching what you guys have been doing for 2 years. My kid has not had a bed, and I was so
Oh,
proud." And I get it. Like, I get it, right? As a dad, that's a hard thing. I mean, and he said he finally had to humble himself, and I get that too, to step up and ask for help. And he says, "And I'm grateful that you gave me an opportunity that I can pay it back by building another bed for a family." And that's exactly what we want. I
yeah.
remember I was sitting in a dentist office one time. I mean, who likes to sit in the dentist office waiting to get,
No.
Right.
terrible. And in walks this mom and probably about an 8 or 9-year-old kid. And I was sitting there and I had my SHP hat on and shirt on and all that. And this mom, I could tell she was kind of trying to catch my eye, Yeah, you could tell that. And I finally looked over and she says, "Are you Luke?" I said, "Yeah." And she kind of hiccuped a little bit and said, "Well, I want to thank you. You brought my son a bed a year ago." What I learned, Kathy, is
Yeah.
there are millions of people that want to help. They just don't know how, right?
Mhm.
And when they do, they want to feel, and this may sound selfish, but it's not. But we serve because we want to feel like we made a difference.
Yes.
We want to
Yes.
feel like that fulfilling feeling that comes from serving. I mean, if you're out serving and you don't feel like you did anything, you're not coming back, you
Right.
know?
Right.
is your time is valuable, and you want your time to go to something that really means and really does make a difference.
It's really remarkable, Luke, because what you're talking about, there's this ripple effect. So on one hand, you are helping a child establish a home. Really, the bed is their home.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, you're talking about the ripple effect that the volunteer feels and the gratitude, the grace, the emotional commitment. It is really, how else can you describe it but a win-win? That it goes both ways. What you have done is absolutely remarkable. Any other stories where we could see this ripple effect, both to the recipient and to the volunteer? I just am in awe of really how you built this. Can you give us an eye into how you did this?
Sure.
You start
From the
in your
ground up.
garage.
Yeah.
You start in your garage, and now we hear there are chapters all over the country. Not only are there chapters, you've got Lowe's involved,
Step by
Master.
step. It's funny.
Oh,
I
because there must have been some stumbles along the
Oh,
way, I would
100%.
imagine. Yeah,
Well, I do a lot of like nonprofit counseling now because I
I
get
see.
questions a lot, and
Uh-huh.
there's a lot to that question, right? How nonprofits get viewed by the public, but how
Yes.
nonprofits get ran. I look, I'm an entrepreneur. I've started and stopped many businesses, and so that's the only thing I knew. I mean, I had no business starting a nonprofit. I didn't know I didn't even know what that a 501(c)(3) was. Right. So, but I knew what a business was. And I knew how to run a business. And I knew I had a full-time job when all this started. I didn't have
Wow.
time to
Wow.
invest in it that I saw other nonprofits would invest into. So the only thing I could do was I got to make this as simple, straightforward, easy to understand, easy to donate to, easy to volunteer as I possibly could. And the most important step for all you nonprofits out there listening, the most important step is understanding what my mission was, which is build
Mhm.
beds for kids, and do not, under any circumstance, deviate from that.
Right.
One thing and do it the best. It's called mission creep. I didn't know that at the time. That's what I was doing. That's why I say dumb luck sometimes, because I didn't know that I was selecting what is oftentimes the single greatest reason why nonprofits fail is they
I
deviate from their mission. You know, I didn't
Maybe
have
it's
time.
too large, you think? That maybe
Well,
it's too
let me put it this way. Sleep in Heavenly Peace is known for what it does.
Mm.
Builds and delivers beds for kids. We don't provide bookshelves or books or teddy bears or all these other things. We build beds for kids.
And
That
that's
is
it.
it. Why that's important is now that's what we focus in on. So when you focus in on one mission and that's all that your attention goes to,
You're
of
not,
course you're gonna be
yeah, you're not deviating your attention in other
correct.
directions. You're
Correct.
not
You're not
very interesting.
distracted.
And I tell you what, that's the hardest thing because when
Yes.
you bring in all these great people like yourselves, big-hearted people that love to
Yes.
help, and you go into a home to deliver a bed, and you see a kid doesn't have a desk, or the
Right.
family doesn't have a microwave. What are you gonna wanna do?
Yeah.
Of course, you're gonna wanna go and get these things to these kids.
Yes.
So to look at a chapter president that says, "Luke, I went to this home and, they didn't have a microwave. I'm just gonna go get 'em a microwave," and tell him, "Well, you're not gonna do it under the SHP name." That's a
Mhm.
hard thing. I mean, I'm a good guy too.
Yes.
Would love to go in with him,
Sure. Yeah.
To make sure that you keep your mission simple and straightforward is super
Uh-huh.
important.
That
Super
makes so
important.
Wow.
much sense. So,
Interesting.
and you
Very
are
interesting.
so articulate, Luke.
Oh,
You are, I mean, you make it just straightforward, understandable, and you've become obviously a public speaker and you're the visible face of this movement. And how has sharing these stories with wider audiences changed your understanding of leadership and impact?
it's huge, huge. In fact, I have my own podcast called Leadership Evolution because when you start a business, right, and you get going and there's a phenomenon that happens and it's called identity fusion, which means is you and your organization, especially in the nonprofit sector, because most nonprofits start from some sort of trauma, some sort of
Right.
horrible or positive, either way, situation that you instantly have passion for. A high level passion, so much that you spend your vacations and every waking moment trying to build on this passion that you're not getting paid for, right?
Right.
So this identity of this organization you built and you become one. I
Mm,
became SHP a long time ago. Even now, 99.9% of people on the planet that know Luke Mickelson only
Right.
know me because of Sleep in Heavenly
Sleep
Peace.
in heavenly peace.
So
That
you become this one identity.
and
The
but
organization's not.
speaking of that and your core mission, do you think people underestimate the connection between a child's sleeping environment and their mental health, their
Oh,
physical energy, their ability to thrive? I mean, I want to go back to the core reason you started. I think it's the core reason you still need to be there today. And I
right.
think that notion of no mission creep, no distraction, just your core mission is
100%.
terrific.
Well, it's when you like, that's why I tell people, listen, if you just stop and think for a second, don't breeze by it because it is easy to just to breeze by. Oh, a kid doesn't have a bed. Oh, he's getting a good night's sleep. Okay, move on. It's way more than that. Just think of the implications that these kids feel when now they wake up in a bed. Now they have friends come over. Now they have a room that they can decorate. Now, I mean, all these little things that when you
mhm,
really kind of stop and think about it, it's such a improver. It's such an attitude improver. It's such a way that these kids can now, I mean, if anything, relate to other kids. It's just a bed. And here's the thing, ladies, we know how to do it. It's simple. We just built 10,000 beds with Lowe's in 24
mm.
hours.
Oh my God.
Is a bed every like 8.5 seconds. Now, granted, that was like
Oh,
5,000 volunteers, but we can build at these bed builds. We'll build 50 beds in just a couple of hours, and these are with volunteers, people that may have never touched a tool in their life,
mm,
and that's the beauty of it. I knew a long time ago, child bedlessness was not going to be solved by some farm kid from Idaho in our country. It's going to be solved by local people. It's got to be
mm,
solved by people who want to step up and help someone like a child who has, by the way, is in this situation not because of their choices,
right, right.
it's because of either someone else's choices or bad situations. It's not always the
Mhm,
parent, but a lost job or a fire or something like that. And the sad reality too is this is one entity, this is one human being that can't help themselves. They can't
mhm.
solve this problem themselves.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So it is up to us.
Can I ask you, do you have metrics for evaluating the impact on children, the emotional impact, the dignity, all the things that we have articulated? Is there a way to measure the impact that the bed has had?
Great question. We do a pre and post survey, which is about the
Do you?
best we do right now, and
Right.
we we're getting better at it. In
Uh-huh.
fact, just yesterday, and I'm going to totally screw this up, but we
Eh,
just actually signed a contract with a university in Georgia, and I should remember the university's name. I'm sorry, but they're doing an 18-month study, which is
mm,
not an easy thing to do to get
no,
into college, right?
right.
They're doing a 12 to 18 month study on the impact of children with and without beds. And I'm
Okay.
really excited to find, and these are professionals, right?
Right. Right.
We're
Right.
not professionals here. We could just ask questions and we get a lot, we get a lot of, post surveys that talk about the improvement in the classroom from teachers, the
Uh-huh.
improvement in
Uh-huh.
grades, the home attitude, right? Just the overall feeling in the home that the child has, they're all hugely positive improvements. And of course they are. We know they are.
Yes. We know
Yes.
they are, but I wonder, yes, the way to measure that so that,
Yeah.
because I would imagine when you are looking for funding, this would be something that would be very important for you
Yeah.
to include.
Right. Yeah, a lot of grants ask for that kind of stuff, and
Yeah.
that's why we produce some of it, but I'll be honest with you, like, even the lack of impact, specific impact analysis that we can provide, it's just so obvious. You're right. It's just so
Yes.
obvious that a kid should
Yes.
have a bed. I don't
Yeah.
what is the impact?
Absolutely.
Yeah, what is the impact? I don't know, but it's gonna be a good one. That's I mean,
Yes.
to some
Yes.
point, you just know it's what's needed. I mean, it goes back to the 85 in the prison,
Yeah.
right? Is
Right.
it just because they didn't have a bed? No, of course not. But it is an interesting fact, and when you it's not a far stretch or a far cry to look at what could cause a child to end up in that kind of a bad situation or a bad choice from not having a bed. Well, poor sleep, poor mood, poor friends. I mean, it's not a long chain to connect.
I've done some grant reviews, and that's what prompted me to ask the question that when evaluating different charities, this is something that's really important. These sort of statistics that while we know it intuitively, seeing it, in black and white is so crucially important. So I'm glad you're doing that because it makes I hope that will make your fundraising appeals easier and you get to achieve really high numbers from having all that backup
The
material.
data. Yeah.
That's what we're hoping for.
Yeah.
Luke, looking back on this whole journey that you've had, what has surprised you the most about people, about generosity, and about what communities can accomplish when they come together around a need?
You know, it's a great question, and thanks for asking. It all goes back to the volunteer. I have been blown away that there are men and women that are as dedicated with their time, their hearts, their strength, physical strength, especially mental capacity. There's a lot of technology we use that our older volunteers struggle with, but they work through it. They don't have to, they want to, because they feel like, they have the same sense and passion that we all have for providing beds for the kids at whatever cost it takes. It's amazing to see that. When we got our big break in 2018 when we were featured on a Facebook series called Returning the Favor. I don't know if you've
Oh,
heard of it. It was hosted
no.
by the great
Yeah.
Mike Rowe. You know Mike Rowe, Dirty Jobs Mike Rowe?
No.
Yeah, great guy, right? And, anyways, he'd go around the country and he'd highlight nonprofits and their founders and surprise them. He'd show up and then he'd give them something. Well, he gave us a warehouse that we could use rent free for 4 years.
Oh my God.
But the biggest thing he gave us was the
Publicity.
megaphone to announce us. I mean, it was viewed by 10 million people, and
I
because of that,
Wow.
we went from 7 chapters to 125 in just 12 months, so
oh, wow.
we really blew up. But when they were done filming this episode, we had our 7 chapters there. They were part of the episode and blah, blah, blah. Well, all the camera and the crew and everybody left. We all went to dinner that night, and, these are all people from 5 different states. We didn't know each other very well, but we were all, united in this common cause. Well, my buddy, Jordan Allen, who's our executive director now, stood up and he says, "Let me ask you, everybody, 2 questions, if you wouldn't mind answering." And this was super revealing to help you answer your question. The first question how did you find out about Sleep in Heavenly Peace? And the second question was, and this was the most interesting and revealing, was, what has it done for you personally?
Mm,
I didn't think about that. I knew what it did for me, right? But I
Hmm.
didn't really, I assumed in a lot of ways it was the same for everybody else. But my gosh, I mean, there was people that were struggling with alcoholism that they don't
mm,
struggle anymore. Their marriage was
really?
on the bricks, right? And now they're doing this together. They're going on dates together. Their
Mm,
children are more bonded together because they do this as a family. I mean, it
Wow.
that was kinda like one of those side effects you didn't even really know to even ask that question.
yes.
Now, I have learned more and more, reiterated to me more and more, that service is really the true joy to happiness, or at least
Mhm.
one of the very pillars of happiness, because it brings people together, and it brings perspective to you personally that you would otherwise not necessarily get. You can't think about what the conditions or what the life would be like if someone was without, if you didn't go out there and help them. What would it
Right.
be
Mhm.
like if, you didn't have a car and you needed to go to work and, you're walking to work every day. Go and walk with them and then you'll understand, right? It's
Mhm.
these things that you can really, I guess, count your
Wow.
blessings, the old saying goes, and when you do that, your blessings are pretty big, and it
Mhm.
helps you feel the joy that comes from. So I think my biggest lesson I've learned is there's just so many people out there that are amazing people, and they have big hearts, it makes this world, it's made my world worth living in.
Oh, I love
Wow.
that. But
Yeah.
it's back to your concept of mission creep and the core mission that it's just there's so many problems in the world and everything can be so overwhelming. It's hard to focus on one thing and service and something that might bring you happy so you have a better perspective in approaching your life and all the challenges and issues.
So, Luke, one more time, sleep in heavenly peace. The link is
shpbeds.org, plural, shpbeds.org. And there you're going to find ways to, you'll find your local chapter. You can donate your dollars to it. 10% is all we take. 90% of your dollar stays in that community. I mean, I got to turn the lights on, right?
yes,
90% of your dollar stays to help kids in that community. All the beds stay in the community. That's what I wanted when I started this charity. I wanted
yes,
how I would run it. If I'm going to donate to my kids locally,
right,
that's who I want to help. By
yeah,
gosh, I want to go there. You can donate your materials there. You can find ways to volunteer. And best yet, on our website, if you know a child that is sleeping on the floor, whether it's yours, your neighbors across the street, or your friend 5 states over, you can go to that website and apply for a bed for that child. Doesn't have to
wow,
be your own. And based on the
okay,
zip code, if we have a chapter president that has accepted that zip code in a deliverable area, then they will get that application. And, it's not a first come, first serve. It's based on need, so if
okay,
you've got a child that is in great, great need, please apply for them. This is the best way we can get them beds.
wow. Well, Luke, this has been just a terrific episode. I just, that small, we are so grateful for that small spark. The Xbox ad, I guess,
Yeah,
Luke,
that's a good point. I never thought about that, Beth.
that caused you to go into the garage and to say, kids, come help. And what came as a family activity grew into a nationwide answer of bedlessness. You've created a word and you've answered a problem. And I congratulate you. Thank you so much for being a guest and teaching us that service is alive and well in our country. It's a
Thank you.
beautiful thing.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so
Thank you,
much.
Luke. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of It Happened to Me. We encourage you to learn more at ithappenedtomepod.com. Please use the contact form on our website to submit your guest suggestions, comments, questions, ideas, and feedback for the show. You can also email us directly at ithappenedtomepod@gmail.com. We would really appreciate it if you can leave us a 5-star rating and review on your podcast app like Apple or Spotify. This helps others in the rare disease and medical challenge community find us. It Happened to Me is created and hosted by Cathy Gildenhorn and Beth Glassman. I'm Keira Deneen from DNA Today, and I serve as our executive producer and marketing lead. Amanda Andrioli is our associate producer. Ashlyn Anokian is our graphic designer. And remember, it happened to me. I'm not alone, and neither are you.